Hey, it's Squidly. So here are some mistakes that a lot of backpackers make, and as we go along, see how many of these 8 mistakes you've made. So of these mistakes, I'm willing to bet that everyone watching this who has been on a backpacking trip has made at least one of these mistakes. And the one that they've probably made is this first one, which is overpacking. Especially when we first get started backpacking, we have it in our mind that we need all of this extra stuff that's going to make time on trail or time in camp more efficient or better, or a better experience or something, and it just turns out not to be true. And it's usually several trips in before we start to really dial in our gear and what it is that we need to be bringing. Mistake number 2 is skipping trip planning. Just picking out a trail and saying, I'm going to go. Now, if we're honest, the truth is we've probably all made that mistake. At some point, we've probably all just picked out a trail and said, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go do some distance and just go, and don't put a lot of effort or time into the trip planning, only to find out when we get there that water sources aren't available or the trail conditions aren't what we were anticipating. It was too difficult, or maybe it was too easy. The point is, without doing some kind of advanced planning, you get there and you're not prepared for what the conditions are. Number 3 is wearing inappropriate footwear. And I can't stress this enough. You have to know what you're putting on your feet. You have to know that it's appropriate for your feet. I don't understand how people can... Okay, so seriously, you have to have some experience with your footwear. And it's not just your shoes, it's also the socks. So put a little research into it. Whatever shoe it is you finally settle on and say, okay, that's what I'm going to hike in, don't let the trail be the first place you walk in them. Put them on, take some walks at local trails or just around town. Wear them on the weekend, wear them cutting the grass. Whatever it is you do, put them on your feet. Mistake number 4 is not testing your gear at home. On the trail or in camp is not the place to find out that you don't know how to operate your stove, or to find out that you don't know how to set up your tent, or how many stakes it requires, or anything about setting up your gear and using it. Also, and this one is kind of critical, on the trail, in camp, at night is not the place to find out that your sleeping bag or quilt is not rated really for the temperatures that you're going to be experiencing it. Set it up outside. Spend the night outside on a weekend, or weekday for that matter. Experiment with it and experience what it's capable of. Know these things before you get out there. Mistake number 5 is poor navigation skills. Now, the truth is, there is no teacher like experience. So getting out there and experiencing having to navigate on a trail and navigate using a map, that experience is going to teach you a lot going forward. And each trip you go on, that experience just increases and your skills increase. But the truth is, most people don't use map and compass anymore. They use electronic maps. And so one mistake that people make is not having the electronic map or a paper map and not knowing how to use what they do have. Mistake number 6 is not practicing leave no trace principles. Recently, I worked with a group who made a video series on the leave no trace principles, and I would invite you to look at those principles and make them a part of your practice when you're in the backcountry. Mistake number 7 is neglecting food planning. Now, this number 7 is a tough one, me included, even though I've been doing this for 30 years. You would think that after 30 years of doing this that I would have the food planning pretty well figured out. And the truth is, I never get it perfect, which is not necessarily a terrible thing because I usually overpack food, but at least take the time to work out what your meal plans are going to look like so that you have at least enough food for each meal for each day and some snacks. Carrying a little bit of extra weight because you overpacked food is one thing. Not having enough food because you underpacked is something else. And finally, mistake number 8 is underestimating weather changes. To kind of go back to the trip planning, considering what the weather is going to be, even though even professional weathermen can't completely predict exactly what the weather conditions are going to be, it's impossible as backpackers for us to do that. So, how do you prepare for that? Well, that requires a little bit more research and taking a look at what are the extremes of temperatures, what are the extremes of weather during the period of time that you're going to be there, the time of year, and the location where you're going to be. Putting a little bit of research into that is going to save you potentially some serious discomfort and maybe even hypothermia. Okay, those were 8 mistakes that backpackers frequently make. And at the beginning, I asked you to kind of keep a tally of how many of these you've made. It doesn't mean that you're still making them, but in the comments, tell me how many you've made, and also add to that some additional mistakes that I did not include in this video. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.